All right, Marc, it's finally here. NHL trade deadline week, and we are taking a look at the three biggest questions surrounding Canadian teams this week leading into the deadline. Why don't we start with the Toronto Maple Leafs? 0-3 since coming back from the Olympic break. The question's pretty simple. How deep does the sell-off need to go for the Toronto Maple Leafs?
And the quick answer is as deep as they need to go to be able for a major reset. I don't want to call it a rebuild. Matthews, Nylander, Nyes, they're locked up for the long term, and you may want to build around them up front, but they need to revamp that blue line. And to do that, they'll need some younger prospects, and they'll need some more draft capital as well. This obviously means cutting ties with, pending UFAs, but also players that may actually fetch a higher value out there on the market. When I take a look at this roster right now, obviously you question leadership, you question the culture and the energy around the team. But do you really want to build your blue line around any of those defensemen going forward 2 years down the road? My fast answer is no. Your youngest defenseman is Simon Benoit. And with all due respect towards him, as he's a warrior, you don't build your blue line around him. So I think they need to go pretty deep, Frankie. What do you think?
Yes, the short answer is yes. Now, it goes without saying, anyone who's a UFA next season has to be out the door for some kind of assets. That's Bobby McMahon, that's Scott Lawton. Those are the two that are going to fetch you the biggest. Now, other questions that fall into that category, Austin Matthews after this year is going to have 2 years left. Now, you build around a guy like Austin Matthews, but does the organization take a look at that and say the value of him will never be higher for a trade? That's a big what if. But the one I'm going to throw back to you, Marc, is this. In between the pipes, next year, Toronto's going to have 3 goalies that will require waivers. Do they have to find a way to get some kind of asset for one of those goalies moving forward so that they don't lose someone for free next year and they don't have to go to a 3-goalie system?
Well, the one thing we know in this market and approaching Friday, there may be some organizations looking to shore up their bullpen. If you can get draft capital or a younger asset, I'm saying move forward.
Okay, so why don't we stay with the goaltending theme, because the Edmonton Oilers this season, they finally made a change. They moved out Stuart Skinner, they brought in Tristan Jarry, but clearly it hasn't worked. There's a little bit of time before the deadline. Do the Edmonton Oilers actually have to make another goaltending move?
They need to do something. They made the trade they could afford to make at this point. We didn't know that a throw-in player would be dearly missed in Brett Kulak, but that's for another story, and maybe you can chime in on that, Frankie. But the reality is the Tristan Jarry experiment has not worked out, and Connor Ingram hasn't been an improvement at the backup position. If you're stuck with Jarry's term and contract, maybe he can come up and be the big game goalie he was coming out of junior and early in his career with the Pittsburgh Penguins. The reality is they definitely need a more efficient and potent backup if that's the case. If some of the big names are available, this is not a money in, money out type of deal for Edmonton. They need to clear up because they're crunched against cap.
This is the crazy thing about where the Edmonton Oilers are at right now. It's that they're in win now mode. It feels like there's a sense of desperation, a sense of urgency. So yeah, if you have to package up one of your young prospects, whether it's Quinn Hudson or Isaac Howard, to go out and try and get a goalie at this point because your goaltending situation isn't going to win you a Stanley Cup, you have no choice. You have to do that. And yes, they do miss Brett Kulak. The fact that he could play up and down that decor, move the puck, and give them quality minutes, they don't have that anymore. So goaltending feels like it's not necessarily as stable as they want it to be in Edmonton, considering the fact that they made that deal. They have to do something. Now, a situation where goaltending might feel a little more stable, I guess recently, is the Ottawa Senators. Linus Ullmark has played well since coming back from the break. And the Ottawa Senators, that is a team that has a chance to be on the outside looking in and eventually make the playoffs this year. But do they have to make some kind of other big swing for it to happen?
Getting wins in the 2 games until the deadline in Western Canada is actually a message to Steve Staios to try to at least increment by for that team because they've been solid and clawed their way back. This is not going to be an easy task to be part of the playoffs, but that one little push could definitely help them. They were missing, and I mean missing, some just average goaltending, and early in the season, they probably would be in the playoff picture. Let me throw this at you, though. to help out with the goaltending and Linus Olmark as their man. Maybe they shore up the bullpen like we've talked before and they get a more efficient backup goaltender. But I think a right-handed top 4D that can bridge the gap until Carter Yakimchuk can actually be that guy would probably go a very long way for the Ottawa Senators, Frankie.
There's no question about it. When you look at their roster, that's the only area that I think needs to be addressed, is because if you look at the right side of the ice on the back end, they're going to go some combination of Zub, Jensen, Spence, and maybe Matt and Paolo if he gets in the lineup. It's a little bit light, and if we look at what they're doing on the left side of the ice with Sanderson, Shabbat, and Clevin, like there's a lot of quality there. So getting someone who can play the right side of the ice, maybe it's not a right shot defenseman, although there's a lot available on our trade bait board, is going to be key for the Ottawa Senators. That's their priority. Maybe if you want to sprinkle something up front, that's fine. But in a perfect world, when they're all healthy, they actually have roster decisions to make up front. So for the Ottawa Senators, I see one area of need. It's a defenseman that can play the right side of the ice moving forward.
What a boost would that be for that team to make a playoff push? They're still a younger team in the Eastern Conference.
So there we have it. The biggest questions facing Canadian teams this week leading into the trade deadline on Friday. We'll see what happens.